Melted and cooled 1 pound of butter. Break your eggs into a separate bowl. That way, if you have a piece of shell, you can spot it. If you put it directly into the butter, you'll never find the shell. Add the eggs to the butter. Add 1.5 ounces or jiggers of Southern Comfort. This happens to be a 3/4 ounce measure, so I'll do 2 of these. Gently mix the eggs, the butter, and the whiskey together. You're not looking to whip, you're gently mixing. Don't forget to scrape the sides. Use your spatula after you've turned your mixer off so that everything is incorporated evenly. Slowly add the sugar. This is light brown sugar, not dark brown. This is light brown, and add it by the spoonful. Don't just dump it in. Mildly lumpy is okay. That's because the butter is not quite as runny or melted. If you prefer to work with a batch that doesn't have any lumps, that's fine. Just melt the butter a little more. If it's extremely lumpy, then your batter really might not turn out as well as possible. So next time, melt your butter a little bit more so it's not so lumpy. 1 box of sugar in, getting ready for the second. Here's how it looks and the consistency of the butter, the eggs, the sugar, and the whiskey. Pretty smooth. Now we're going to very slowly start adding the flour. That is 8 cups. You want to weigh it as opposed to measure. Some people smash the flour down and it doesn't turn out right. The consistency is wrong. This is 2 pounds of flour, pre-sifted flour. You can sift it yourself. It just makes them a little fluffier, which is great. I'm lazy, so I go with the pre-sifted and call it done. You add it slowly to your batch. This is an important part. I have this wonderful KitchenAid mixer. This is not one of the heavy-duty mixers. This is not the low end, but the medium-low end. Do not walk away while you are mixing this. This takes time. You do change your beaters. Otherwise, I guarantee you will burn up your mixer. This is a very thick dough, and if you are not standing right here, even for a minute, you can definitely burn up your mixer. It's very dense. So here we go. If you're a cook, you're definitely going to know what I mean when I say gently and carefully add the flour. If you do it and you bump the beaters with your spoon, it'll be a bad picture. So be careful and do it slowly. Notice how the consistency is starting to change. This is on stir. Right now we're on a fine beater. It's mixing very well and it's not overly taxing your machine. As it becomes thicker and denser, it will start to struggle. You will notice your unit will start getting hot. When it does, that means you need to take a break, let the unit cool down, and change your beaters. Change your beaters to something like this. Then, when that starts being a challenge, change it to a dough hook. You want to end up buying a new mixer? Well, don't do that. In no time at all, you'll burn up your mixer. So I'm going to continue adding the flour. You take your time. This is not a fast process. It can take you an hour. Depends on the temperature of your room. If it's hot, if it's cold, those things can all make a difference. Enjoy the process. As you can see, it's actually starting to get thicker, heavier. My unit is not hot yet, but as I add more, you'll notice there's a sound difference to your mixer. If it starts screaming or laboring, that's when you need to change it. Don't wait. It's not going to hurt by changing your beaters. Just a good way to start out with the fine beater to get things started and incorporated well. Notice how it's kind of thick and sticky? This is the consistency you're looking at. Scrape your sides. Don't do it while the machine is on. Needless to say, there's wonderful cooks, bakers that do this all while the unit is going. I choose not to because I don't like to break things and make a mess. But that's how thick it is after just a tiny bit of flour. Notice the difference in sound in my mixer? If not, go back. It's a very light change or subtle change, and she's starting to get a little warm. This is the time when you change over your beater. This is the consistency. That's how thick it is. It's pretty much not going to go anywhere, kind of like wallpaper paste. And here's how it looks and sounds with the other beater. Time to add some more flour. Notice the sound difference of my mixer? Listen closely. You can hear it starting to labor. So it's time to change over to the other hook. It's only half empty for the flour, so we got a lot more flour to put in, so it's going to be a lot thicker. Listen closely so you'll make sure you don't burn up your mixer. Hope you heard that. So this is a gift card that I include in all the gifts of cookies, telling people a little bit about our family tradition. Here's the completed version. This is one full batch of dough or batter. It is, depending on the size of the cookie you make, it can be anywhere from 30 to 48 dozen. It also depends on whether you make them round or if you make them in the shape of your finger, like a little worm. If you make them small, you're going to have probably easily 45 to 50 dozen. It's a great alternative for making lots of small collections of gifts, of which you can put in cupcake papers and whatever as gifts. Or you can make them round, more like a pizzelle, which it's not, but you could make them round. Or you can make them finger-shaped, like I said. If you make them large finger-shaped, they're going to come out kind of looking like that. That is a typical size that we make. That size on the iron is about 42 to 44 dozen. That's the color you would like, and they firm and get crunchier as they cool. They cool on paper towels. You don't want it to leave, when you close the iron, you want to squeeze the iron. You want it closed and tight. Otherwise, instead of being a nice, light, fluffy cookie, it turns out like a sandwich. You don't want sandwiches. Lukken cookies are not sandwiches. They are a light, wafer, easily and deliciously enjoyed individually with ice cream, or you could get indulgent and dip it in chocolate. Have a great day. You're experiencing the initial stages of making Lukken cookies. And yes, the iron is called a Lukken Izer. My Belgium is pretty bad. Lukken Izer. Takes a little practice. But anyways, I make this video in dedication to all those that came before and the tradition that continues today. This is November 30th, 2023. Have a happy holiday season and another video to come while we're actually cooking the cookies. So for all these first timers, this is the base of a Lukken Izer or Lukken cookie iron. Izer means iron. Lukken is the name. This is the base. This can sit on a gas or electric stove. It's easy to place, and there are pros and cons to each source of heat, be it electric or gas. When you're dealing with the flame, again, you have to know what you're doing and watch. This is not a cookie you put in the oven and you set the timer and disappear. You need to attend these processes. I can't stress that enough. If you've never worked with cast iron, then you definitely need to do as follows. If it's a brand new unit, and it's heavy, and this is the part that sits on your stove, it has to be seasoned. Seasoning is your choice of process. Best way, look it up on Google and see what way works the best for you. The part where the cookie actually sets is right here. You do not put these units in your dishwasher. You only mildly wipe them down with a soft wet cloth. You do not scrub them. This is cast iron. Cast iron does not like being scrubbed. If you store your unit, you store it with paper towel in between or wax paper, preferably paper towel, because the simple thing is it'll rust, and it is awful getting the rust off of the cookie iron. This section here, you can see where it's heated and the left marks. It's not dirt, it's not old cookie. It is just a mark where the batter has set and there's oils from the previous cookie batches. It is clean, and of course, if you don't ever do anything, no, it's not going to be clean. But if you perform the usual normal maintenance for cast iron, it will be fine. It hooks together. It actually says Lukken Izer. If your cookies have too much butter, it will leak out along this side. You need to be watching this. If it does, you will end up with a stove fire and a lot of smoking. Your fire alarm will be going off. It will not necessarily flame up into huge flames, but it's not a happy experience. There are two grooves, one here, and you set your iron into this. This is how it sits on your stove. You do not heat a cast iron pan or this fast. It goes relatively slowly because this all builds up heat and then it transfers onto here. With that, it continually creates heat. So if this is up to maybe a couple hundred degrees, this in time is going to get even hotter. So you have to be mindful. You have to watch what you're doing. You have to be aware of what is going on. So you would put your cookie here. We use the finger shape. In most cases, it's this way. You lay it here. When you first start using your iron, you might want to take a paper towel and use a little bit of solid Crisco. I would not recommend any kind of the sprays or alternatives. I do not recommend that. I don't like it. So there you go. You use it on your choice. But you would just wipe the cookie area with the Crisco. Your first dozen, in all likelihood, are not going to be gift-giving quality cookies. Although still tasty, you might burn a few or a couple that are a little too thick or a little bit raw. You have to learn your process, how to time it, that kind of thing. So you put your cookie right there, your batter right there. You close this up. You have a handle here. Yes, you hold this as tight as you can. Best thing is to have a pot holder and hold it here. Yes, if you're not careful, you will burn your hand. So you want to squeeze that as tight as you can so that it is smooth and closed tightly. If it is a little bit open, you're going to have a sandwich. It's not good. So you would count, depending on how hot your iron is, you would count maybe to 18, 25, something like that, at the rate of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Then you flip it over and you do it again. Once you've hit that magic number, you open this up and you look and test out and see how your cookies are. If they're stuck to the inside, if they're black, then that tells you how hot your iron is or how cool your iron is. If you are really raw and you're counting like that, and at 15 it's pretty much like the way you put it in, then you need to increase your number and very slowly heat your iron a little bit more. Again, you close it with the cookie in it. I use two hands, one here and one here with a pot holder. It's the easiest way to keep from getting burned and unhappy. After you hit that magic number, you flip it over and you do it again. When you have hit that number on the second side, you open it up. You use a spatula. I use non-melting plastic versions. I don't use metal because metal can deteriorate and scratch this surface. If that's all you've got, well, then just try not to scoop it up and shovel it off and scrape this away. That's it for a start. When you're done, and you're done making your cookies, you turn your burner off, you leave this here, but you open this up. As the day has gone on, you will be dabbing, wiping. You need a roll of paper towels just to wipe off the excess butter as the cookies have melted. That's what they do. When you're all done, and this is cool, then you can take this off and set it next to the burner or wherever you want, but it will still hold heat. This base part will still be hot in all likelihood. It's going to need a good hour or so, and you, like I said, you don't want to go and put this in a basket of water or in your sink with a bunch of water in it. This is cast iron. I personally have not used any of the electric ones. I have talked to a number of people who have. A few actually enjoy it and like the convenience. Most of the family that I've had that used it hated them. They were not happy. They were not happy with the appearance. They were not happy with the shape. They weren't happy with any of the process. So there you go. Take that as just, whatever you prefer to do. But the electric are popular. You'll see them all over. There's only a few places that still sell these. There's a place in East Point, and it's called Duroni Hardware. Duroni is a very Belgian name, and they carry them. These are not mass-produced, you know, in some factory somewhere. This is a good piece, and this will outlive you many generations. So there you go. So on to the next step. So to answer your questions, yes, you can have the base of the iron on the grates. It will work. Keep in mind, this is a flame unit. You're gonna have to be careful because if your flame's extending out, you could always burn yourself. Or you can take that off. You can lift off your iron, your grate, and place. And whoever said this stuff is light was crazy. It's not. It's heavy. Then you can place this here. Again, now you're going to have a different situation as to how hot your iron gets. I personally do not recommend this, but if that's the way your boat floats, that's what you're going to do. I personally would leave this on here. If you have a traditional stove that does not have the grates, it's easy. You just set it on there and you're good to go. Again, as a reminder, to be clear, so you're not disappointed, a dozen cookies out of a batch of 45 means that you have a dozen people, or 45, 1 dozen batches, 1 dozen collections. So if you've got 45 people that you want to give a dozen cookies to, and they are large cookies, like on here, notice the size on the iron. So it's that big by this big. It's going to look like you were really cheap and gave them a handful of cookies, and it will just seem as a very light gift, so to speak. If you make them smaller, it will definitely give the feeling that you're giving more. You can give a dozen cookies and it looks like there's a lot more, but you're still just giving a dozen cookies and they're small. So keep in mind, if you're making them for yourself and you just like a big cookie, that's fine. There are people that don't care for them. They find them boring, or, you know, they don't drink coffee, so they don't enjoy them with coffee or anything else. It's not covered with chocolate or anything like that. So some people, you know, and you don't want to waste these cookies. So if you make big cookies and you're eating them, great. If you're giving them as gifts, just keep in mind, do you want them to be big or small? If they're big, that means a big ball that you're cooking in the iron. If you want smaller, that's the way you make them. So we're starting the next part of the cookie adventure. Lukken Cookies. This is my tray. I have wax paper. Here's the batter. This is how hard it is. It is very hard. This is good. That's the typical color. And now I'm moving on to the next step. So just a little Christmas cheer. No snow, but that's okay. Just gives you a little bit of an idea of Christmas season. Okay, this is 9 dozen of cookies. This is what I do. This is what they look like. We've maybe gone through half of the bowl. This is how we do it. We're going to put a lid on, and then they go back in the fridge, so they will look like that. So you can put a piece of wax paper over it, which helps to keep them moist and tender as opposed to drying out and turning rock hard. So that's what they look like. And this is the larger finger-shaped rolls. Okay, this is the process. If the dough is sticking to your hands, a little bit of flour takes care of that. Just a little bit, not a lot. And you roll away, just like you were when you were a kid in school. Play-Doh time. Oops. Try to make them uniform so that you can use the same amount of time on each one, so one doesn't get burnt and the other one's raw. So you want to try to have them all the same size.